welcome to The Explainer. Okay, we've got to talk about one of the most famous moments in football history. Today, we're unpacking the absolute tactical genius that won England their first, and honestly their only, World Cup back in 1966. You know, we always get so wrapped up in the pure emotion of these massive sporting moments, right? But today we're zooming in strictly on the structural brilliance that actually made it happen.
They think it's all over. It is now. Man, if you follow football, those iconic words from BBC commentator Kenneth Wolstenholme literally transport you straight to the 120th minute at Wembley Stadium on July 30th, 1966. It's a moment that is just completely hardwired into British culture. But, to really understand how England managed to take down West Germany, we've got to look under the hood. We're talking tactics.
So here's the game plan for today's Explainer. We'll hit on that iconic 1966 victory, how they ditched the wingers, what went on inside the engine room, that wild Wembley showdown, and finally, the tactical legacy left behind. Starting with Section 1, the iconic 1966 victory, England's crowning moment. 32.3 million. Let that sink in. That is the record-breaking number of British TV viewers who tuned in. And when you add in the global audience, we're talking an estimated 400 million people watching England beat West Germany 4-2, right in front of nearly 97,000 screaming fans packed into the old Wembley Stadium. It was a massive, massive spectacle. But here's the thing. Getting to that point involved a seriously controversial tactical gamble.
Which brings us to Section 2, ditching the wingers. Alf Ramsey's tactical shock.
So, picture this. Star winger Jimmy Greaves gets injured during a really brutal quarterfinal against Argentina. Manager Alf Ramsey has a huge choice to make, and he basically rips up the entire footballing rulebook. Back then, the standard global setup was the Brazil 4-2-4, the exact system that won Brazil the 58 and 62 World Cups. It totally relied on these fast, wide wingers hugging the touchlines to create one-on-one isolations. Well, Ramsey completely abandoned it. Instead, he shifts to this narrow 4-1-3-2 formation, basically an early version of the 4-4-2 we all know today. He stacked the center of the pitch, threw in a dedicated holding midfielder, and just totally scrapped traditional wingers. This radical shift actually earned the team a pretty catchy nickname, the Wingless Wonders. Now, dropping traditional wingers like John Connolly and Terry Payne, that drew huge backlash from the press. I mean, critics called it negative, they called it downright boring. But Ramsey's whole theory was that the most critical area of the pitch wasn't the sidelines. It was the central midfield. By absolutely packing that central space, they created this numerical overload that was just brutally effective at suffocating the other team's creative players. Let's look closer at that in Section 3, inside the engine room, pioneering modern midfield roles. It's crazy because there is a direct line from 1966 right to the Premier League games you watch every single weekend. Just look at the breakdown. At the base, you've got Nobby Stiles playing as a single pivot, a defensive shield. That's exactly what guys like Rodri or Declan Rice do right now. Just ahead of him, Bobby Charlton acted as the number 10, playing this free role to link up the play and score goals, kind of like a Jude Bellingham. And then flanking him were Alan Ball and Martin Peters. These two were your classic, dynamic, box-to-box midfielders, just covering insane amounts of ground and pressing nonstop.
And you could see the absolute defensive perfection of this system during the semifinal against Portugal. Ramsey pulls this absolute tactical masterstroke. He tells Nobby Stiles to man-mark Portugal's Eusebio, who, by the way, was the tournament's top scorer with 9 goals. Stiles just shadowed him the entire game. It completely neutralized Portugal's biggest threat. And because of that, Bobby Charlton had the freedom to just push forward, dictate the entire flow of the match, and bag 2 crucial goals.
Moving on to Section 4, the Wembley Showdown, tactics and the brutal reality of a final. Okay, so the final match itself, total emotional whiplash. West Germany's Helmut Haller scores super early, right in the 12th minute. This forces England's narrow formation into immediate catch-up mode, which they handle perfectly with a Geoff Hurst header in the 18th minute. So England eventually takes the lead. But then, bam, an absolutely gut-wrenching 89th minute equalizer from Wolfgang Weber. Suddenly, they're heading into grueling extra time, and this 4-4-2 system is about to be tested to its absolute physical limits. But, we really can't talk about this final without addressing the elephant in the room. 101st minute. Geoff Hurst swivels, fires a shot, the ball smashes into the underside of the crossbar, bounces straight down, and gets cleared away.
It literally created the most famous ghost goal in the history of the sport, leaving us all with a question people have been arguing about for decades. Was the whole ball actually over the line?
To really understand why this is so controversial, we have to look at Law 10 of the laws of the game. It states that a goal is scored only when the whole of the ball passes over the whole of the goal line. That one single word, whole, is literally everything here. If even a tiny fraction of the ball is hovering above the line, it is simply not a goal.
So the Swiss referee goes over, consults his Soviet linesman, Tofik Baharmov, and Baharmov confidently awards the goal. Naturally, the debate just exploded. And surprisingly, even modern science can't agree. You've got prestigious studies from Oxford and Imperial College using video metrology, and they concluded the ball only crossed about 50% of the line, saying it needed to travel another 18 centimeters. But then, flip side, a 2021 virtual reality analysis by Sky Sports claimed it actually did fully cross the line. So yeah, the debate is pretty much endless.
But hey, regardless of whether that third goal was legitimate or not, Geoff Hurst made absolutely sure there was zero doubt about the final outcome. In the 120th minute, with fans literally starting to stream onto the pitch, Hurst decides he's just going to blast the ball as hard as humanly possible to run down the clock. Instead of going into the stands, it rockets straight into the top corner of the net, sealing a 4-2 win and giving Hurst the first ever hat trick in a World Cup final. Unbelievable stuff.
And that brings us to Section 5. The tactical legacy, the blueprint for the modern game.
What's so wild is that this single match essentially laid down the exact structural blueprint that elite clubs still rely on today. Ramsey's pragmatic approach effectively killed off the traditional winger. Think about his steps. Step 1, abandon the touchline. Step 2, create a massive numerical advantage right in the center. Step 3, rely on a dedicated holding midfielder to act as a shield for the defense. And Step 4, since your midfield is super narrow, you rely on your fullbacks to push up and provide all the attacking width. It was a complete and total reimagining of how to control space on a football pitch.
The legacy of these wingless wonders is just massive. Culturally, it's still England's pinnacle football achievement. It even birthed the phrase Wembley Tour, or Wembley Goal in Germany, which they use to describe literally any controversial crossbar goal. But tactically, it proved once and for all that a collective, highly disciplined engine room can completely suffocate and outplay isolated individual flair, especially in high-stakes knockout football.
So it really makes you wonder, if tactical discipline, a narrow 4-4-2 shape, and a gritty holding midfielder were the keys to winning the absolute biggest prize in football way back in 1966, has grit actually always mattered more than flair? When we watch today's incredibly structured, highly tactical matches, we really have to ask ourselves, is the beautiful game truly won in the mud, sweat, and geometry of the midfield? Definitely something to think about next time you're watching your favorite team. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I'll catch you in the next one.